I'd already signed the divorce papers. They rested inside a plain brown envelope on the passenger seat beside me as I drove home under the bright afternoon sun. Every mile felt heavier than the last. 10 years of marriage had slowly turned into silence, misunderstandings, and loneliness. I believed my wife had stopped loving me long ago, and I had finally convinced myself that walking away was the only way either of us could find peace. But that ordinary afternoon, a single unexpected moment outside our living room changed everything. I thought I knew. What I overheard wasn't betrayal. It wasn't another lie. It was a heartbreaking confession that shattered my anger and forced me to question whether I had been preparing to end the greatest love of my life. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Soulful Tales if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories that remind us what truly matters in life. My name was Rowan Mercer, and at 38 years old, I believed I had become a stranger inside my own home. My wife, Marin, had once been the brightest part of every morning. We laughed over burnt pancakes, planned impossible vacations, and promised that no matter what life threw at us, we would always choose each other. Somewhere along the way, those promises became buried beneath unpaid bills, exhausting work schedules, family responsibilities, and countless small disappointments that neither of us ever learned to talk about. The hardest part wasn't the arguments. Those had almost disappeared. What frightened me was the silence. Silence at breakfast, silence during dinner, silence while watching television only a few feet apart. We still lived together, but emotionally we felt like neighbors renting separate rooms inside the same house. Every smile looked forced. Every conversation ended before it truly began. I convinced myself that love had quietly packed its bags months earlier. Our little daughter Alara was only 7 years old. She still believed her parents were superheroes who could fix anything. Every afternoon she raced through the front yard after school with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, smiling as though the world held nothing but hope. Watching her happiness made my decision even more painful. I kept telling myself that children deserved peaceful homes, not houses filled with invisible walls. I believed divorce would hurt for a while, but eventually allow everyone to breathe again. For weeks I prepared in silence. I met with a lawyer during lunch breaks, organized financial documents, and searched for apartments close enough that I could still take Alara to school every morning. Each signature on every legal form felt like another brick sealing the future. I had imagined when I married Marin, I waited for one sign that she still cared, one reason to stop, but every passing day only seemed to confirm my fears. Marin had changed too. She looked tired almost every morning. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes despite sleeping through the night. Sometimes I caught her staring through the kitchen window as if she were carrying a weight too heavy to describe. Whenever I asked if everything was all right, she simply smiled weakly and assured me she was fine. I stopped asking because the answer never changed. Friends noticed the distance between us long before we admitted it ourselves. Invitations to dinners slowly disappeared because everyone sensed the uncomfortable tension. Even family gatherings became exhausting performances where we pretended everything was normal while avoiding eye contact whenever someone mentioned marriage or future plans. That Friday afternoon, sunlight poured across the streets as I drove home earlier than usual. My lawyer had called to confirm the paperwork was complete. All that remained was handing the documents to Marin. I kept imagining the expression on her face. Would she cry? Would she feel relieved? Would she simply nod as though she had expected this all along? I didn't know which answer frightened me more. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Children rode bicycles beneath clear blue skies while neighbors watered flowers and waved at passing cars. It was the kind of beautiful afternoon that made broken hearts feel strangely out of place. I parked quietly in the driveway and noticed another familiar car already there. Marin's mother, Celeste, had come to visit. I hesitated before walking inside. They were sitting together in the living room with the windows partly open to let in the warm summer breeze. Their voices drifted toward the front hallway. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I simply froze when I heard my own name spoken with overwhelming sadness. Hidden behind the hallway wall, I listened as Marin's voice trembled beneath the weight of emotions she had clearly been hiding for months. She admitted she believed she was losing me every single day. She confessed that she woke every morning, terrified that I no longer saw the woman I had married. She blamed herself for becoming emotionally distant after months of silently worrying about problems she never wanted to place on my shoulders. Then came the sentence that stopped my heart. She revealed she had secretly been visiting doctors for nearly a year after experiencing frightening health symptoms she had hidden from everyone, including me. She explained that every appointment filled her with fear because she didn't want to burden our family until she understood what was happening. She had convinced herself that protecting us meant carrying every worry alone, instead of bringing us closer. Her silence had slowly built an invisible wall between us. Tears blurred my vision. Every cold moment I had interpreted as rejection suddenly looked completely different. Every exhausted expression, every distant stare, every quiet evening, none of it had been caused by a lack of love. It had been fear. Celeste gently encouraged her daughter to tell me everything before it became too late. Marin admitted she wanted to, but felt ashamed that she had hidden the truth for so long. She believed I deserved someone stronger, someone who didn't bring uncertainty into our daughter's future. She quietly confessed that if I ever chose to leave, she would understand because she no longer recognized herself either. My hands tightened around the envelope containing the divorce papers. Only minutes earlier, those documents had represented certainty. Now they felt painfully ignorant. I replayed every memory from the past year. The nights she stayed awake after believing I had fallen asleep. The unopened birthday gift she apologized for forgetting. The family picnic she canceled because she claimed she had a headache. I had interpreted each moment as another sign that our marriage was ending. Never once had I stopped to consider that the woman I loved might have been fighting a private battle she couldn't bring herself to share. I quietly stepped back outside before either of them noticed me. I sat alone on the front porch, staring across the neighborhood while children laughed in the distance. The warm afternoon breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass, yet everything around me suddenly felt different. My anger dissolved into guilt. My certainty dissolved into confusion. For the first time in months, I realized I had never truly asked what my wife was carrying. I had only measured how her pain affected me. The envelope rested beside me on the wooden porch step. I slowly opened it and looked at the signatures waiting to end a decade of shared dreams. Those pages had been prepared with logic, frustration, and pride. But love had never been logical. As sunlight stretched across the yard, I realized that marriages rarely collapse because of one terrible moment. More often, they slowly crack beneath the weight of conversations that never happen, fears that remain hidden, and assumptions that quietly replace compassion. I didn't know whether our marriage could still be saved. I didn't know how much damage silence had already caused. But for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't certain divorce was the answer. I remained on the front porch for what felt like hours, although only a few minutes had passed. The afternoon sun still filled the neighborhood with warmth. But inside me, an emotional storm had begun. The divorce papers rested in my lap like a reminder of how close I had come to making the biggest mistake of my life. I realized I had spent months assuming what my wife was feeling instead of trying to understand what she was silently enduring. When I finally walked inside, I quietly greeted Marin and Celeste as though I had just arrived. Marin quickly wiped away the tears on her cheeks and forced a tired smile, pretending everything was perfectly normal. Seeing that fragile smile broke something inside me. For the first time in months, I looked beyond her silence and noticed the exhaustion she had been hiding behind brave eyes. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. Celeste eventually hugged her daughter goodbye and left, giving us one thoughtful glance before walking out the door. It was almost as if she hoped we would finally find the courage to face what neither of us had been willing to say. The house became unusually quiet. Sunlight poured through the living room windows, painting golden patterns across the floor where our daughter, Ilara, sat happily drawing colorful pictures at the coffee table. Watching her innocent smile reminded me of every promise I had made on the day she was born. I had promised to protect my family. Somewhere along the way, I had confused protecting them with protecting myself from disappointment. That evening, after Ilara went to play in the backyard, I gently placed the unopened envelope on the dining table. Marin noticed it immediately. Fear flashed across her face, and I could almost see her preparing herself for whatever bad news she believed was coming. Instead of walking away, I sat beside her. For several long moments, neither of us spoke. The silence that had haunted our marriage returned one last time, but this time it felt different. It no longer felt like a wall separating us. It felt like a bridge waiting to be crossed. With trembling honesty, I admitted that I had almost ended our marriage because I believed she no longer loved me. I confessed how lonely I had felt and how every unanswered question had slowly become another reason to give up. Then, with tears filling my eyes, I admitted something else. I had overheard the conversation she had shared with her mother. The color drained from her face. For a moment, she looked frightened, embarrassed, and relieved all at once. Months of hidden pain finally spilled onto her face. She could no longer pretend everything was fine. What followed was the longest conversation of our marriage. She shared every fear she had hidden inside her heart. Months earlier, she had begun experiencing frightening health problems. Doctors had ordered several tests, and although the results had not confirmed anything life-threatening, the uncertainty had terrified her. She had convinced herself that if she kept smiling and handled everything alone, she could spare me and Alara from worrying. Instead, the burden had slowly consumed her. Anxiety stole her sleep. Fear stole her laughter. Guilt stole her confidence. She admitted she had watched me drift farther away every day, but believed she deserved it. Because she had kept so many secrets, she had been afraid that if I saw how broken she felt, I would stop loving her altogether. Listening to her confession filled me with overwhelming regret. I realized that while she had been carrying fear, I had been carrying pride. Neither of us had reached for the other. We had stood only a few feet apart while allowing silence to convince us we were completely alone. Without another word, I picked up the brown envelope. I slowly removed the divorce papers. Then, one page at a time, I tore them into tiny pieces. The sound of tearing paper echoed through the quiet dining room. Each rip felt like destroying another misunderstanding that had nearly destroyed our family. Tears streamed down both our faces as years of unspoken pain finally gave way to something we had almost forgotten: hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, we embraced without pretending everything was perfect. We weren't magically healed. Our problems hadn't disappeared, but we had finally stopped hiding from each other. The following weeks became the beginning of a new chapter. I accompanied Marin to every medical appointment. Thankfully, further examinations revealed that her condition could be successfully treated with proper care and regular monitoring. The terrifying uncertainty that had haunted her for months slowly faded, replaced by cautious optimism. At home, we made a promise that neither of us would ever allow silence to speak louder. Then love again. Every Saturday afternoon became family day. We explored local parks, packed simple lunches, laughed over board games, and watched Alara race across playgrounds beneath bright blue skies. Those ordinary moments became far more valuable than expensive vacations or perfect photographs. We discovered that healing rarely arrives in grand gestures. It grows quietly inside ordinary days shared with the people who refuse to give up on one another. Months later, while cleaning the garage together, I found another empty brown envelope tucked behind an old toolbox. Marin smiled through happy tears and suggested we keep it as a reminder, not of divorce, but of the day we chose understanding instead of assumptions. That empty envelope eventually found its place inside a memory box filled with photographs, birthday cards, and handwritten notes. Every time we opened that box, we remembered how close we had come to losing everything, simply because neither of us had spoken the truth hiding inside our hearts. Life was never perfect after that. There were still stressful days, unexpected bills, family disagreements, and moments of exhaustion. But now, whenever fear tried to build another wall between us, one of us reached for the other's hand before silence had a chance to grow. Years later, Alara graduated from high school. As our families stood together for photographs beneath the warm afternoon sun, Marin quietly slipped her hand into mine. She smiled with the same warmth I had fallen in love with years earlier. At that moment, I realized something beautiful. Love isn't proven during easy seasons. It is proven when two imperfect people choose each other again after nearly walking away. If I had handed her those divorce papers that afternoon instead of listening for one more moment, I would have spent the rest of my life believing a heartbreaking lie. Sometimes the person who seems the most distant is carrying the heaviest burden. Sometimes the strongest act of love is not walking away, but staying long enough to truly understand. If this story touched your heart, please write in the comments. Love grows where honesty begins. And if this journey reminded you of the power of forgiveness, compassion, and second chances, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Soulful Tales too. Your support inspires us to keep sharing stories that heal hearts and remind us that love is always worth fighting for.